Grieving widow's nightmare to get $150 a week from Centrelink. When Lucy Johnson's husband died suddenly after a cardiac arrest in September, her whole world fell apart. Anthony Albanese says the government has been dismissive of vulnerable people in the false debt debacle. Not only did she have to arrange his funeral and sort out his affairs, she was broke. The 55-year-old turned to Centrelink for support, and her problems got worse. Mrs. Johnson was forced to spend months returning to the agency's office in her small town just west of Sydney, which repeatedly mislaid her paperwork. "I was in and out once or twice a week," she told news.com.au. "It became so complicated. They were the most unhelpful. It could be an hour and a half wait. The dealings with them were so terrible that on literally every occasion I went there, I was sent away with another form to sign. Every time I handed forms in, they seemed to be misplaced, and I had to queue up again." Bill died in September aged 58 and had no life insurance because he was considered high risk. It took 2 months for his widowed spouse to receive backdated bereavement allowance, during which time she had to rely on her extended family for money. 4 weeks later, the allowance ran out and she had to return to apply for a mature age New Start support while she looks for work, which is just $150 a week. "My husband and I worked and were self-sufficient for 30 years," said Mrs. Johnson, who retired from her job in aged care 2 years ago because of back problems and began doing bookwork and accounts for her husband's transport business. "I've come for a little assistance. I don't want Centrelink to support me for the rest of my life. I was frustrated and angry. If I had been a dole bludger, it would have been easier. They should treat people with a little more dignity." Mrs. Johnson is still seeing a grief counselor after she went into shock following her husband's heart attack at their home. "Myself and my sons watched him die at the ICU," she said. "I was medication-free before my husband died. Now I have acute anxiety, stress ulcers and stomach problems. I was in hospital twice, it was too much. At the same time, I was dealing with Centrelink. They tend to want to flip you off to the next queue so someone else can deal with you. I went to the doctor's surgery and broke down. I couldn't handle it, it was too distressing. Every time I walked out I felt like reaching for the anxiety tablets. I told the doctor, I can't take any more." None of them have any empathy. The way Centrelink treat people, particularly in this situation, when a husband unexpectedly dies, it's much harder than it needed to be. And it's not over yet. The welfare agency has been heavily criticized recently for sending out thousands of inaccurate debt letters and for being inefficient, confusing and disorganized with an out-of-date system. Vulnerable Australians say they have spent hours queuing at offices and waiting on the phone, with 60% of callers in 2015-16 not reaching a human. Mrs. Johnson eventually contacted her local MP, Susan Templeman, for help her situation. But the trauma of the past few months has left her distraught, like many others who have been wrung out by the system. The public sector union says standards have dropped to unacceptable levels following thousands of job cuts in the Department of Human Services, with the scandal over the debt recovery system piling on more pressure. The CPSU warned the public will suffer as staff struggle to cope. "There's a perfect storm of work coming, with this debt recovery scheme likely to be just part of the problem," Assistant National Secretary Michael Tull said on Tuesday. Centrelink's debt recovery scheme is being investigated by the Commonwealth Ombudsman after calls from labour and welfare organisations to scrap it. But Human Services Minister Alan Tudge has defended the automated process, saying more than $300 million worth of overpayments has been recouped so far as part of a hoped-for clawback of $4 billion. "The system is working, and we will continue with that system," he said. "Yes, sometimes people do have to wait longer than what they would like to wait. We simply ask them to be patient, that they will get through, or they can go into a Centrelink office." Names changed to protect identities. Leave a comment below or email emma.reynolds@news.com.au to share your story.